I'll start from where we last spoke. Now, the thing is, we live in Europe, and there's people in America, Australia. Well, basically, we are in the West. We go to school, and whichever country we go to in the West, they're teaching us a similar history. Yes. And this similar history is not only found in the West, but it's actually found in Eastern countries like India, Southeast Asia, where else in many African countries, Latin America and Russia, except for one place, which is very serious, in the Middle East. So now, why does the world have one history and then the Middle East has another? Now, some people will say, China's got a different history, so has India. Not really, because China and India, their history matches the timeline of the West. Yeah, it will agree with the information that's in the West. For example, they'll say the printing press was made in Europe in the 15th century, around then, but printing and paper came from China before then. So they will agree. They're not going to exactly be opposite each other, except for a few things that they've left there to show, hey, it's a different history, blah, blah, blah. So now there's a similar thing in India. Yeah, you'll find that they've got their ancient Aryan civilization and the Vedas. And then whatever's in the Vedas, the way it's passed down, it will match the, official world timeline in history. But now one place does not match: the Middle East. Yes. So now nobody wants to have a look at it. Yes. Apart from Anatoly Fomenko came along. He's a professor at Moscow State University. He came along with a very huge team of hundreds of people who were helping him do the research. For example, he showed Eastern Europe, Northeastern Europe. That's like Scandinavia, from Germany all the way through to Russia, Ukraine, and all those regions. And he turned around and said, hey, it's a bit ridiculous that we're talking about European and Christian history when almost the majority of the coins that we found here and the artifacts and many other things, and mysteriously, all of them have got Arabic writing on them, the majority. So nobody's talking about it. People will walk into museums. They haven't got a clue what that is. They're having a look and they don't really know what it is. So he pointed that out. Then he turned around and said, hey, we're going through all these kings that are in Russian history, and the timeline matches the Old Testament history, similar to what the official history says, but they've modified the names and things like that. And he shows them on graphs. And he shows, hey, the kings of Russia are similar to the ones in the Old Testament. Yeah. And then he shows that the similar timeline is used for the kings of England, for the kings of the Roman Empire, for the kings of the Byzantine Empire in Istanbul, for the kings of many other nations. He shows, hey, they just copied it from nation to nation and they just changed the names. Yeah. I've pointed this out in my books. That's a great discovery that Anatoly Fomenko has made. So now many people have made YouTube videos, and in Tataria groups, they call this previous empire, they call it Tataria, because some maps call it Tataria. Anatoly Fomenko, and some other people call it Tataria or Russia or the Mongol Empire. Now, there's many Muslims in Europe, in the Western world, who were born in the West, who've been brought up with Western history. Yeah, they call it the Caliphate. Yes, the Islamic Empire. Yeah, and there's so many people call it the Kingdom of God, because it matches the Old Testament kings, King David and others who come after him. It matches the timeline. So now we know that the Old Testament is similar to all these histories, but in England they'll call it King Alfred the Great. For the Eastern Romans, the Byzantines, they'll call him Heraclius. They've just changed the names, similar stories for all their timelines, and they've done that throughout the world. But now Anatoly Fomenko went one step further. And what he did was he went through the Kremlin Museum of Armory, of weapons and everything else, and kings' crowns and many other things. And he turned around and showed, hey, the majority of these things, the bishops, crowns and everything else, he went through them all and he said, hey, they've mysteriously got Arabic writing on them. Not normal Arabic, but the Arabic that's in the Quran. And he pointed this out. And he said, and they are telling us, Russia which ruled, huge parts of Eastern Europe. We're talking Poland, Ukraine, going into Finland and many other places. And they're saying, hey, this was a Christian nation. Kiev and Rus, they call it, and they say, the Greek Orthodox Church went there from Istanbul, the Byzantines, and they give us some bogus history. And he's saying, if it was Christian, then why do we have all these objects here, the entire majority with Arabic writing and writing from the Quran? We've got another problem here because we've got the Knights Templar. And what they've told us about the Knights Templar is that the Knights Templar were parts of the Crusades, and they were fighting these so-called Muslims. But then we've got down from records, which, the dates cannot be verified. Anatoly, Fomenko and others have said that these records are more recent, probably 200-300 years old. But historians claim that they're many centuries old. But they still say that the Knights Templar had a leader with a beard who was called Muhammad, who they call Baphomet or Mehmet or Muhammad in English, modern English. So now we've got another problem. Who the hell were the Knights Templar? Now, when you go deeper into it, they're telling us that after the 15th century, the printing press, they printed millions of books in the 15th, 16th, 17th, 18th centuries. Yes, before Napoleon Bonaparte. And most of the books were in languages like Latin and French. Now, the thing is, so they're printing thousands and thousands of books in Renaissance Italy, Machiavelli, many other books. Now we've got a problem. Nobody speaks this Italian language until the 1850s. Oh, even then, only 1% of the people could speak it, only a little bit. Like when you've got foreigners who come into Europe who could just about speak a few words, And then they're telling us we've got all these great libraries in Europe. Go and have a look, amazing libraries with Italian works, Renaissance, blah, blah, blah. Yes, but we've got people who don't speak Italian. Even by 1950, yes, they turn out to say around an estimated 20% of the people in Italy could speak Italian by 1950. So what about all these books? They all seem like forgeries. Then we've got the same problem in France. Apparently, during the French Revolution, 90% of the people in France did not speak French. So, and they're telling us they already had these thousands and thousands of French books. En français, oui, liberté, égalité, fraternité, la révolution. Well, now we've got a problem. Were they printing all these books for ghosts? They're telling us that the Bible was translated into French in the 15th, 16th century and in Italian. Who are they translating Bibles for if people don't even speak the language? Can you see we've got these problems? Yes. So that means that we can't actually find a Christian history. So now when we go back to Spain, we've got the Cathars and the Knights Templar north of Spain. The Cathars are in south of France and in Italy, and the Knights Templar are in West Germany, Holland, France, England. They're the dominant power. Yeah. And the Knights Templar are supposed to have been, involved in building these cathedrals. And according to the official history, yes, they were known as the Knights of Christ of the Temple of Solomon. Yeah. And they were supposed to have these people who constructed these cathedrals for them. And those people were known as the children of Solomon. Yes. Now, the thing is, everybody ignores the Quran. But the Quran turns around and says that Solomon had a group of people, and the Muslims called these people like the children of Solomon. And these people were an invisible race of alien beings, and that they built these amazing buildings, huge buildings that had some form of technology, and that had boiling facilities to boil water, same like what we've got in power stations where they boil water in some nuclear power stations in other places. That's written in the Quran, but nobody's going to pay attention to that entity. But now we've got a problem. We've got 1/4 of the world who are so-called Muslims who are following a different timeline, who've got it in a book called the Quran. But mysteriously, the oldest Quran is from St. Petersburg in Russia. Yes. So, and that's in between the east and the west of the European continent, in the north. Yeah. And then we've got thousands of Arabic coins lying around in Northern Europe. So nobody wants to pay attention. Then the Quran makes a challenge to everybody. and it tells you, hey, yes, it challenges humanity, and it says, hey, they're telling lies about history. They're lying about this, they're lying about that. Nobody else is saying it openly. That book has been saying it. Other religions is based on belief. The Quran is not based on that. I'm not talking about modern Islam. Let's talk about the Quran as a historical document. Yeah, as a historical document, it says they're telling lies. These are the lies they've prepared. This is what you are going to find within their lies. But the main thing is there was a global civilization just 2 or 3 centuries ago. We can't define the exact moment.
Would one of the parts of the cover-up in modern history potentially include what we understand as the Ottoman Empire?
Oh, the Ottoman Empire, it's because it covers the Middle East. What happened there, that looks like one of the last stands of Tartaria. Those 2 Arabic people, they introduced me to the Quran. So I thought, hey, I'm going to read it. Now, when I read that, what happened is it makes the challenge to you. And then it tells you something that's strange. And it says, hey, go out there and you're going to find a symbol there with the number 19. Yeah, it explains it, and I've put it in my books. Yeah, so I've been looking at that since, I've been age 15. So since then, I was able to figure out what's a scam, what's prepared, and what they're doing. Yes. So now the Quran actually says that there is a group of alien beings that lives on Earth, and they communicate with a certain group of humans. Yeah. And those humans are greedy, selfish, and people like that. Now, what they want, that alien group of beings, they want to control humanity, and they want humans to be, subservient to them, below them. Yeah, that they don't want humans to have their own independent thinking, independent mind, or their independence. That's what the Quran says. And it says, basically, it wants you to love them. Yeah. Now, in upper class English, somebody's going to call that worship them. Yeah, but in common English, it just means that they want you to love them, to believe them, to listen to them. That's it. Now, there's some things that they failed to hide was that Arabic, the language of the Arabic Quran, not modern Arabic. Same like modern Hebrew is not same like the Hebrew in many of the manuscripts. Now the thing is, what do you call it? That Arabic was actually the global language. They can't hide that. It's difficult. It's because, for example, there's a language called Ladino that was used throughout Latin America just only about 80 years ago. 70 years ago, before people started going school, and in school they're teaching them modern Spanish.
Right.
Yeah. If you have a look at all the letters that were written in Ladino language, let's say from Chile in the 1930s, Argentina, there's no difference between that and Arabic. But I'm going to put this in a new book to show how they created modern languages. Now, when somebody looks at Sanskrit, yeah, if you look at Hebrew, modern Hebrew, it looks nothing like Ladino, but Ladino looks the same like Arabic, and Arabic looks the same like so-called Hebrew 3 centuries ago, almost like it's the same language. That's the only differentiation. Why people will say it's different is because these so-called historians will say, let's say you write a letter in English with your handwriting, then I write one with my handwriting. Then they're going to say, oh no, Raphael's handwriting's different. That's not English. That's a language. They'll just give it a name and say, that's Australian. And David's from England, so that's English. So, oh no, they'll just classify it as 2 different languages. That's what they've done on purpose. It's like I'm somebody, it's because I've been studying many languages from a young age, international languages. Yeah, it's because I studied French for 5 years in high school, then 2 more in university, and I studied Spanish for 5 years. So I was naturally into languages. Then because I really wanted to travel, I thought, hey, I want to become an international person. So I studied Chinese, Japanese, yeah, Arabic, Indian, what's the other language? Turkish, Russian. I studied quite a few. I studied German for a year, but didn't manage to learn much. I'm not going to lie about it. Nobody has a look at who the Jesuits are. The Jesuits mysteriously formed in France, in Paris, right? When you hear this, you're going to think, what the hell? It's actually, well, because I don't want to insult the viewers, or I would normally say, what the yeah. It's the Jesuits formed in Paris in the 15th, 16th century. That's the date, but they could have formed in the 17th century. Around that time, yes, to say after that, 200 years later, to say that in Paris, they dug out the graves of everybody, yeah, and they put them, in the Paris, they call them catacombs, under the city. And they say there's millions of bones, yeah, mysteriously bones, and they're neatly organized, yeah,
right.
That almost like it must have taken thousands of people to do that. And you know how the average person is going to react if they were supposedly Christian or even Muslim. Muslim and Christians are similar, or even if they were Jewish. Nobody in their right state of mind is going to get hold of all these bones and start burying them. Now, the strange thing is, these type of bones, like in Paris, that are under the city, we're talking about the Jesuits, I'll get back to them. They're found in many places: Poland, Hungary, Italy, Spain, Germany. You'll find them, Czech Republic, many other places. That you'll find these strange places with thousands of bones. Rome, yes, for example. So now the thing is, what the hell's going on here? So now what nobody seems to mention is that when the Jesuits formed, the Jesuits' number one objective was to convert the Muslims in the world to Christianity. In those days, convert didn't mean convert. It really meant convert or kill him. Kill that guy, man. Kill him. Yeah, have you got your weapons? They killed anybody who is not going to accept that Jesus Christ died. Yes. Now, the Quran tells you the story. Now, this is where the Quran comes in. The Quran says they didn't kill him. Yeah, they're lying about it. Yeah, simply. So now the Quran and the Torah has got some problems with it. But let's get to what Islam says. Islam says that what happened is that there was a group of people. Yes, there were Jewish priests. The Quran says it. The Bible says this also. This part is still there. And Anatoly Fomenko confirms that, showing that when Slavic emerged, Arabic was the language of religion in Russia. And he says that for the Slavs, in the Slavic language, the word Jew meant priest, Judah. It didn't represent the children of Israel. Now, the Quran also differentiates that. And so the thing is, it says that there was a group of people, yeah, that they wanted Jesus Christ dead. And because they thought they killed him, that's why they then realized they didn't kill him. But then they wanted him dead because Christ came to fulfill the law. Fulfill the law means that, hey, Christ prayed. There's no difference between the way Christ prays and the way the Muslims pray today. If you actually open up the Bible, washing their heads, hands and feet, and then bowing on the floor, facing the direction of a building or somewhere that they say is the house of God. And the Quran says it doesn't matter which way you pray, east or west, but just do it that way for convenience. Yeah, so that you know what you're doing. It practically says that in Islam and in the Quran. So we don't see any difference between what Christ did and modern Islam. Yes. So now the thing is, it says that these people did not like the law of God. So what they wanted to do was cancel the law, make sure that nobody followed, because they want you to worship. Yeah. You call it Satan, call it aliens, call them whatever. They want you to worship them. So what they said was Christ died and your sins are forgiven. So therefore, the law is no longer valid. That's what it was all about. And that's why when the old law, that's what the Quran says it was about. So the Quran says that. And the thing is, it says that somebody else was there and it wasn't Christ who got crucified. Now, if you have a look at they're going to say these documents are centuries old. But Anatoly Fomenko and other researchers, even me, I personally have found in my research, they're not centuries old. These documents are probably only a few centuries old. And in the oldest documents of the so-called New Testament, it says that that the other guy who was there at the trial of Jesus Christ, he was called Jesus as well. That this guy was called the Son of the Father or the Son of God, and the other one was called Jesus Christ the Messiah. So the Quran says that the other guy got crucified. The other guy, it was the other guy. And what happened is that after after Jesus Christ, the Sanhedrin, or however you want to pronounce it, the Jewish priests, the businessmen, the bankers, everybody else, they got together. Yes, they got together. And what they did was they thought, we've got to fight against this movement. Because what happened is after the Torah came, they had taken power. And they'd managed to already modify many things and put that so that their interests came first within the religion of the Torah. Call it Judaism, but that religion at that time was not Judaism. It was just the religion of the Torah. So then Christ came. He came for the lost sheep of Israel. Yes. And it wasn't just Israel. It was all the people. So Christ came for everybody. So then there's all these millions of people following Christ. They didn't believe the crucifixion. So then these people declared war on these so-called Christians. Now they declared war on these Christians. And then in the Bible, it says, after Jesus Christ is going to come the Spirit of truth. And whatever he says, blah, 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 you should follow it. Now, if you go to the other side of the world, the character of Buddha, even Anatoly Fomenko and other people have said is a fraud. It's basically identical to Christ. He even says that the next Buddha who's coming, he's the one who's going to guide you. Yeah. So now what happens is this. Yeah. So everybody was waiting in the world, and these people who opposed Christ, the Jewish leadership at the time, the Pharisees, the Sadducees, whatever names they've given them, they declared war on the followers of Christ. The followers of Christ had gained so much power. And then they suddenly had a leader. And that leader was the Prophet Muhammad. That's why the Prophet Muhammad was known as a Christian. And his knights were known as the Knights Templar. But they've changed history and said it the other way around, saying, no, the Knights Templar fought the Muslims. So now coming back to the Paris catacombs, what happened is this. If you read through the history of the Knights Templar, and the Cathars and the Inquisitions, what they did was they burnt people and collected their bones. That's what they did as a punishment. Are you beginning to see what the catacombs are all about?
Yes, all the heretics basically now buried underground.
Yeah. So what they did was they burnt them, they collected their bones, simple as. Yeah. So, and that was, Anatoly Fomenko says that was around the 17th century, or, just before the time of the so-called Napoleonic times. Yeah. So as you can see, it's beginning to make sense. Whereas they are telling you some bogus history saying, oh no, there was no space in the graves. So we dug out millions of graves. We dug them all out. Yeah, we cleaned them, made them clean from graves and wiped them and put all the bones together. That doesn't make sense if you're going to get bones out from underground, which has got soil and dirt on and everything for many centuries, and then you're going to polish them, clean them, and then put them together. Are you beginning to see what I'm saying? Yeah, and then dig out Paris to bury them under the buildings and everything else under Paris. It just doesn't make sense. Yeah. So have you got that part?
Indeed.
And now there is a secret to do with this. Now everybody is going to talk about the Kabbalah, blah, blah, blah. All these people are talking and nobody is bothering to even say for 1 minute the word Kaaba they're going to say is Hebrew. But we cannot find an ancient Hebrew language. We can't seem to find it. That most of the Jewish books, from a few centuries ago, are written in a handwriting which is identical to Arabic. Or they're going to give it strange names. But anybody who knows, handwritings or goes through them, I'm going to put it in the future book because it's just so simple to see. Yeah, what do they call these things? They call it cursive Hebrew or Solitreo Hebrew. I've been through the Hebrew alphabet and Arabic alphabet since the age of 15. And I've been through them all and I thought it's just a joke, different handwritings. So I went through many of these things, even for Sanskrit. Sanskrit is actually Arabic, but a different handwriting with lines on it. It's ridiculous. And then when you look at the way Mandarin developed, Anatoly Fomenko shows, is just a joke. Just a joke. It was a non-existent language. It's not thousands of years old in China. And if you have a look at it, it supposedly came from Mongolian script because they say the the Mongols, it was theirs. Now, the thing is, we can't seem to find these Mongols. All we could find is Beijing was called Tatar City, which is one of the worst conspiracies I've ever heard. Nobody has ever heard of Tatar City. So now the thing is, the way that they've got their alphabet and their writing, that was Arabic in itself. But they're saying, no, it's Mongolian. Mongolian looks identical to Arabic, but modified Arabic. Then we've got Latin. So when you say these Roman languages, what is the definition of Roman? It's like, for example, they say the word vaccine comes from the word Latin word vacca. They're going to tell you that that's from an old language. But then we can't seem to find a Latin language in Europe. All the books in Europe, before and around the Renaissance were in Arabic. Yeah, and there's too many remains of Arabic coins, Arabic writing here and there that we can't deny it. And then the word vaccine, they say, come from vacca, the Latin word. But then they're going to say, oh no, that's from the Hebrew word, similar, yeah, vacca. But then in Arabic language, it's also vacca. You understand? So then they're going to say, oh no, it's Latin. Where's the proof that it's Latin? Who said it's not from Hebrew? Who said it's not from Arabic? Okay, what is the difference between Latin Romanesque or the original Latin and Arabic? Which came first? Who was reading what language? If Latin was so widespread, how come nobody could speak this Latin language? Even back in the days. Yeah? Why were the books in Arabic? What is the difference between Arabic and Ladino? And Ladino is supposed to be a mixture of Romance, Spanish, and Arabic. But then what makes it simple is, if you go all over the world, because we're looking at a global civilization here, then you cannot bring Hebrew into Tatar City. It's clearly Arabic. Then you can't bring Hebrew into Manila in the Philippines because we've got no Jewish presence there, and they're using similar words. Then it's obviously Arabic. So that's how we found in the Mayan language. Many people have had a study of it, and some people are going to say, "Oh, Mayan, ancient Mayan, or these people, they were related to the Hebrews. They're the lost tribes of Israel." That's because they want you to think that, because they've made sure that people are so anti-Islamic, anti-Muslim, nobody will think for 1 minute, hey, that's Arabic. And then they've made you think that Hebrew and Arabic is two different languages, or originally was. In the same way that, can you imagine, after 500 years, they're going to be telling people that American, Canadian, and Australian was 3 different languages. Can you imagine if somebody said that? That's what they've done. Hebrew and Arabic was not even 2 different languages, nor was Latin. The Cyrillic, script that's used in Eastern Europe, and it came from Greek. That is just modified Arabic. That's all it is. Or then, if you want to say, for the sake of being an anti-Islamist, let's say, okay, it's modified Hebrew. But then you can't say the word Hebrew, because that language was the language of the rabbi, the masters, the educated teachers. That's why it was called Arabi in the first place. Arabic, Arabi, that's why it was called Arabi, the language of the Arabs or the rabbis. It meant the educated people. But today they've made people believe that Arab means a race. No, it actually just meant educated people, or teachers, or professors, or masters. That's all it meant.